Welcome to North Idaho Experience. Is AI about to take over the world? Well, Eric and I sit down with Luke Dupin to answer that question and many others. This was a wild conversation. Enjoy.
I would never say that to your spouse. I've tested that theory.
Yeah.
And did not
a risky
go very
move.
well.
Eric's spouse, Eric's wife is a nurse. We did a DUI wet lab the other day at the academy in Post Falls.
Okay.
So you come in, and this is to teach the cadets how to do DUI field sobriety tests, right? And so you drank starting at 9 a.m. It's all very calculated. The lady that runs it, Jonelle, she's a former ISP trooper, and she's dialed in with DUI stuff. So she's testing your BAC throughout the process the whole time and gets you above the legal limit, and then you have to maintain that. And then you go in the room with the cadets and they do all their tests on you. It's super fun, especially as former cops. So I've done this before.
So you guys are the guinea pigs doing the drinking?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yes. Where the hell was I going with that, Eric?
My
Where did I
wife.
start? Your wife.
Yeah, the wife.
So,
Yeah,
okay, cheat code, because I did this last year, and I was like, I'll never do it again because it ruins me for 2 days. Like, I'm incapable of doing anything that day because I'm drunk. Then the next day I'm wildly hungover. So I got talked into it, but then we got hooked up on it. So we went back to my house.
He got talked into it by me, and then I didn't
and then
show
he bailed.
up. Yeah, then I
that's
bailed.
cool. I said, I'll do it if Eric does it. And then Eric bailed. Got hooked up on IVs after it. So, and then his wonderful wife dialed me in. Actually, Dave's the one that stuck me, but
Yeah.
I had them fight over it. Dave won. He didn't like clean. You know, Dave doesn't
Yeah.
use antiseptic wipes. He just
Why would he do it
like
to me?
he's in the back of an ambulance. And I think that saved my life. I was still a little bit shitty yesterday, but 1,000 times better than last
Yeah,
time.
I go over there to pick her up, and it's a whole bunch of drunk people from the day over at Seth's house,
Yeah.
and they've got IV bags hanging from the
the-
lights next
the
to the
lamp.
couch up off the. It was pretty entertaining.
That's funny. So do you pass the field? Like, who makes it through while still being drunk? There's
No.
got to be a few, right?
Megan.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a breath test, you know. So as a trooper, like I'd run them through the series of field sobriety tests, and at the end I would always pass them, right? And that's unless they refused it, but most of the time they don't. So then you have an actual number that's pretty damn accurate.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that, so they just had to rely on, you know, checking your eyes for nystagmus, and then, you know, walk and turn, one leg stand, usual tests. And most of us failed. Megan, and she was well over the legal limit.
Yeah, she had the highest number.
So she's
but-
a pro.
Yeah, but if you don't get the eyes, the hardest to get on a DUI is athletic females.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like naturally their balance is better for whatever reason, but they'll usually pass the walk and turn and they'll pass the one leg stand.
Interesting.
But you got to catch the eyes. Eyes are where it's at.
And that's a flutter, right?
Yes.
That's what you're looking for?
Yes,
The eyes flutter when you're drunk
an
at the
involuntary eye
extreme?
movement. They like move horizontally. They go tick, tick,
Okay.
tick, tick.
Yeah. And
Can't hide that shit.
It'll happen when you're totally sober, but it's about catching it consistently. Because if you do this anyways, you'll have like a bounce or two.
Yeah.
But it's getting the steady boom, boom, boom. It has to do with the alcohol in your system. It'll just make your eyes bounce.
Interesting.
I think they probably had a hard time with me too, because I've done the tests, explained and demonstrated them, whether in training or actually in the field, literally thousands of times. So I'm like, I'm like pretty darn good at doing the walk and turn and the one leg stand.
Yeah.
But the eyes, I
Yeah.
could feel it myself when they'd hold their finger
You're like,
out.
"Don't do it."
And I'm like, I could see or like feel my eyes just and I'm like, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take me to jail.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes. And you know who the worst people at the DUI wet lab are? Former cops.
100%.
Not go in there and Seth's like, yeah, I taught them a thing or two.
Yeah,
I was
let me tell
showing-
you how
I was
it's really
showing them-
done,
Yeah,
son.
yeah,
Okay.
while
Yes.
you're drunk.
So while
showing
you're
your-
failing it, you're
Yes.
like, yeah.
So they're probably looking at me like, okay, old guy,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. But, you know, it's all about doing our civic duty, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, and
Giving back.
Thank you for our service.
maybe
Or you're welcome for my service.
that profession, I'll be curious to get Luke's take as we go down the list of professions likely to be either taken over or influenced or altered by artificial intelligence. I mean, law enforcement, I mean, how the hell do you replicate that?
Yeah. I mean, this is something I really haven't thought about, but you know, when it comes to AI systems, you're dealing with projections of human behavior, and so you're basically getting extra information about the scene that you may not be able to deal with. Kind of like you're talking about how it's difficult to do the levels on a podcast while you're having the conversation.
Yes.
So I could imagine some kind of video and audio augmentation on the police officer that's watching for certain behavior cues of the person, and then in their ear be letting them know, hey, this person is overly fidgety. But how much of that is really going to help? Like, that's some of the stuff that human intuition is the best at. So you know what I mean?
No, that just really piqued my interest, because
Yes.
you could have an AI system that ties into the body cams, and now it's monitoring a situation from multiple angles through a camera that we might not perceive, but it might say, hey, there's a bulge in the waistband that could be a pistol, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah.
Man, I'll tell you, just the way you described that, I already thought of an application, because I was big on game film, right? I'd go back and watch T-stops and say, okay, something was going on here. What was it? I missed it. Whatever it was, you're thinking about what to say next. You're thinking about how to, you're thinking about the process. You're watching their hands. You're thinking about safety. But oftentimes it is, when you break down a line of questions, you always try to get them to baseline, where somebody's just going to answer questions the normal way they would that are of non-consequential nature. And then you pepper them with consequential stimulus. You ask questions that are consequential. AI would be one of those things. When you ask this question, you got a pacifying behavior. You got the jugular was pulsating. They immediately looked. It was a different, and especially as a new cop, that would be hugely beneficial, because it takes a lot of time to have the script down to where the cognitive, logical part of my brain is paying attention to that instead of just thinking about what to say.
Yep.
Like you said, you doing a podcast and trying to manipulate the audio. Like, that's that.
Well, and the other area I could see is, have you guys seen I forget what it's called, but the monkey test? It's a video where you watch people passing the ball.
Yes.
And if you're fixated on it, you won't see the guy in the gorilla suit walk through the scene.
Yes.
It's uncanny.
Classic,
the first time you get caught by it. And so that type of, we get tunnel vision, especially in stressful situations. And so perhaps the biggest benefit to an AI is just to have a 360 view of all the things the officer isn't focusing on at the time. And if there's dangers and threats outside of their current focus, to be able to trigger them to, like, hey, open up your eyes and look behind you. There's a car that's about ready to plow into your cruiser that's not paying attention, or something like that.
Yeah, it gets scary when you talk about law enforcement, because I've often said it. I always thought one of the best professions potentially for AI would be a judge, because it could be so impartial. But then you're talking about seizing freedom from somebody that's not a human.
I think an AI judge with human oversight potentially could be viable, because it would remove the emotion. I'm also seeing, SWAT teams already use drones. I'm assuming they have thermal capability. I don't know, but I could see a world where you're with a barricaded subject, drone is overhead with thermal imaging in the house. You now know where every human being is in that house.
Right.
What a huge tactical advantage that would be. It's scary now if the government flips on you and they're coming after your freedoms that they shouldn't be, of course. But
we talked about this before,
cool.
man. I absolutely believe at my core that our government is looking out for our best interests, and their thoughts are about enhancing our freedoms and ensuring that they stay there. I firmly believe our government would never do anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my
Right,
gosh,
I'm good.
As we can well see.
Yes.
No, I've been excited for this conversation since we scheduled it, and also a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking out there. We'll cover some dark topics, but I want to try to keep bringing it back to the positive and what we can, what individuals can do about it, and not just disconnect and get overwhelmed by how big the issues are.
Yeah.
So people know, you told us last time, I can't remember, but you've been professionally coding since you were 13?
10 years old.
10, okay.
Yep. I was helping a friend's dad move stuff in an old dingy basement, and uncovered a PW Basic programming book, which was the predecessor to Q Basic. And I took that home and typed the commands directly in, not knowing what they were, and watched the output. It was kind of like a tutorial book, before the internet was a thing. And that sparked my interest, and my parents, gave me some special training and stuff. They found tutors and things like that when I was young, and I became a professional programmer when I was 14 years old.
So what year is this? How old are you now?
43. So what would this have been?
90s?
93. 1993.
I don't even know what I was doing in 93, but I think I could barely turn the TV on.
I don't know if we want to record what we were doing back in 93.
Good point. That's before it was mainstream. Did your mind did it just connect for you and it made sense?
Yeah, it was the most interesting thing in the world. It was just a little number guessing game was the first one that I typed in, and I just remember the connection between being able to type in this code that I didn't quite understand. Basic is pretty human readable, if this, then that and stuff. It's simple, but being able to actually control this machine that had all this computation power as a young child, it just immediately captivated me.
And here I was downloading pictures of Pamela Anderson.
Very
line
slowly
Yeah.
back
by
then.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild.
That was all MS-DOS prompts, right?
Yep.
Like early
Yep.
90s, just basic DOS prompts. That's
Yep.
wild.
Yeah, like Windows 3.1, I think would have been the hottest thing back
Yeah.
then.
So you've been in this field forever.
Forever. Yeah.
And when did you get into AI things?
I mean, honestly, I was kind of slow because I hated it. When the crypto movement first came out, I was really interested in that. I don't like where it went, but the promise of crypto is interesting. That, originally computer systems were designed as walled gardens, to where you have a set of servers where any calculation they do, we trust completely, and then everything outside of that walled garden, we have zero trust. And that was the compute model for almost 20 years. And crypto turned that around to where we trust nobody, but through this algorithm and computational complexity, we can trust emerges out of the system. That's how Bitcoin works. And I thought that was really interesting. I've always been, kind of a libertarian-minded person. Decentralization's a power. I've always been drawn to that. And so that promise of crypto, it was interesting. And when AI was hitting off at the same time, I immediately didn't like AI because I saw it as a centralization of power. And so I kind of held off until ChatGPT really hit. And then it was just, you can't ignore it anymore. It just became obvious where the whole industry was going.
Is your libertarian views, is that somewhat of an anomaly for people in the tech world?
I don't actually think so. I think most of us are pretty altruistic, but what I've found is if you go at a problem ignoring the incentive models and you just think that I'm the good guy and so I'm going to act in the best interest of the company and the people, that's what makes you the evil person. And I think that a lot of the tech people think of themselves as the good guy and they're like, I won't make those same mistakes. But then they work under the same incentive models that always yields the evil behavior. And so I think that's the self-deception that all these big players had. I don't think they have it anymore. I think they're purely money-based now.
I'm surprised there's not more tech guys in politics, because that is an apples to apples comparison of exactly what I think happens. You get to a certain point in time where you think you are what's best for everybody else, regardless of what they're telling you they want.
Yeah.
And whatever means necessary for you to forward what it is you're pushing, it's going to be for the greater good and greater benefit. That's
right. And so that's where the incentive models are always what bear out behavior over long periods of time. So if you create a company where the incentive models are customer first and non-predatory, then even if you do get big and you scale, those incentive models will continue to focus on the customer. But if you build something like Facebook or Google or any of those, your incentive model will eventually become controlling your population and manipulating them for whatever money-making vehicle you have, whether it be advertising, government contracts, military contracts, whatever it is.
I mean, the power, I've gone on and off the social media train before and gotten sucked into it and then out. And then now I don't know if I have a healthy relationship with it, but it's better. But the advertising works so well on there. They know what I like, like I'm currently looking at building a gym in my house. So I'm getting all the gym stuff, and I've surely bought things off of Instagram ads that lead me down that road. It's gym shit and guns for me right now. And that's
Good band.
Two very expensive things, but yeah.
Pretty fun hang.
It is cool. It is cool.
Mine just posts dumb Sasquatch shirts because I've bought a couple of them, so maybe it's got my algorithm.
That and cute farm animals. I do get that too. Not like that sounded weird. You know what I mean.
Do I? Not entirely certain.
Cue the awkward pause.
Yes. Can we open source and ask this question? Is Seth? No. Never mind.
What are your thoughts? Do you have kids, and would you let would you let them on social media, or do you?
We limit it. Social media itself isn't bad. I think TikTok is. It all comes down to brain rot. Is where this conversation will go. And from that perspective, whether or not your brain rot is through your friends posting pictures and liking and trying to get obsessed with follower accounts and things, or just endlessly watching YouTube shorts, it's about the brain rot. It's about ruining your ability to concentrate on something for a long period of time.
Yeah, I've caught myself using it almost as a break when I've been focusing on something for a long time. I'm like, oh, I just want to brain rot for a minute, and I'll jump on Instagram and look at guns.
Well, it just helps you zone out. I mean, we used to talk about that at PD. Like every dude especially needs to go to the nothing box for a while.
Yeah.
Where you have your favorite chair, your favorite spot, and whether it's flipping the TV on, that's what it used to be. But now I'm convinced it's just this. It's just like anything else, moderation. If you just want to zone the F out for 10 minutes, it's a good means of doing that. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's just hard to say anything super like helpful about that stuff. I mean, TikTok, if you guys haven't used it, you should for just a bit, just to feel that algorithm worm into your brain. It's really interesting. You'll get mesmerized by it, and an hour or two will go by, and then you'll stop, and it'll just it's an experience you should have, and then quickly uninstall it. But the trajectory I see with content, if you stand back and look at what we've had, we initially had like TV broadcast content. So your favorite show comes on at this time, you have to be in the chair then, or else you miss it. And then the delivery system got much better. DVDs, now I can pick when I start it, but it's still difficult. And then Netflix lowered that friction even more. Now I don't have to get up. I can just hit a button and watch forever. And then YouTube has moved it down. The next big step is to start tailoring the content for the person. So it's an odd thing I do, but I edit my own movies. Like Top Gun Maverick, one of my favorite movies. I've got 2 different cuts. So one of them I've spliced together Top Gun, the first one, part of it, into Top Gun Maverick, and then cut out the scenes I didn't like. So it's one trajectory of one character arc of this person's life. I'll cut out scenes of movies. Like I'll have movies I like, but there's like certain parts I don't want to show to my 5-year-old, so I'll just cut those out. And then I'll just edit movies down also, of like taking an hour and a half down to 45 minutes of the parts that are good. And although my wife hates when I do this, but I think that this idea of like dynamic delivery of content is going to be the next step with AI, to where we're going to start editing. And then the step after that, I think we're going to start augmenting the content. So if you don't like that they've race swapped some of your favorite characters, with a stable diffusion, you can just race swap them back to what the original source material was, and just like it'll be the same movie and all that, but it'll be a different avatar within that thing. And I think that's what's the next thing.
Like Captain America,
like Black Snape, yeah, that kind of thing.
That's wild.
One. I have to see this Top Gun movie that you saw.
Can't hook it up, dude.
There was the original Top Gun, because we're the same age. Like that was iconic growing up, and then the new one was awesome. You want to talk about waiting 30 years and then coming out with one of the best movies in the last 20 years, in my opinion.
Dude, I'm literally getting goosebumps as you talk about it. I love that movie.
Awesome. They did a great job doing it. And what did they do? All they did is stay true to what people of that era liked in a movie. Man, you just keep it about like, hey, masculinity's all right. Just dudes being dudes, and it was awesome.
Thank you for making a movie that wasn't DEI'd up the wazoo. Like
Nothing about that.
I'm glad my kids are older teenagers now, because looking at the animated shows that come out now, I'm like, they're so ridiculous.
There's a hidden message in like
everything, man. I'm like, come on.
And that one was just about honor, busting your ass, and there was black pilots, there was Hispanic female, but nobody gave a shit.
Right.
Like
Normal
that was not
life.
an underlying theme of the whole thing. Anyways, I didn't mean to get into that, but I have to see it.
It's awesome. One of the things that'll make you laugh, the scene, they're training, and the coyote has the close call where he passes out and wakes up and pulls up, and then immediately after that, the airplane hits birds and crashes.
Yeah.
So I just cut out that middle part so that when he goes and pulls up, he just doesn't pull up fast enough, and I just kill that character off. Just not that I don't like him, but it just adds more like weight. To
a little more drama. I have
more
to
drama.
see it. That would be freaking cool.
That's amazing.
So
I'll show it to you before I leave. I got it on my computer.
Did you extend the beach volleyball scene? Did you make that one? Did you make that part? Change the music.
It's an hour and 45 minutes long. Yeah.
The rest of the movie's 3 minutes. It's all flying beach volleyball. Hour and 30 minutes. Yeah. That's awesome.
What the AI movies that I've seen come, you see little clips on social media. They're so realistic. I mean, it's got to spell the end for Hollywood. I can't see any other way around that.
Yeah. See, this is it. There is aspects of that. There's no question it's going to change massively. But humans now more than ever crave authenticity, and so I do think there's going to be a rash of those movies. And I think it's the positive side of it is that the small indie groups, 3, 4, 5 people, like they'll be able to make movies that can like touch wide audiences now, where that's been eclipsed for a long time. You know, like Star Wars, when that movie came out, it was done on a shoestring budget, and the quality of it wouldn't be enough to like break through today. But now those smaller groups have an opportunity to break through again. And so I think that's the positive side of it.
Nice.
And so although I think that their first movies will be AI gen, they would quickly want to start moving back into more real, like the way that the Lord of the Rings was made. I think that's the stuff that people are really going to start gravitating towards.
Yeah. I'm just excited to have celebrities not have a voice anymore, because I'm so tired of hearing them talk about politics and things. I'm like, you're a court jester, nothing more. Keep your opinions to yourself.
You're an entertainer. Go tie me up a balloon animal. Just because you played amazing people on television doesn't mean that your opinion holds more weight than everybody else. Not that you aren't entitled to your opinion. I just don't have to give it more weight.
I love when you have a much better way of saying things than I do, so thank you for that.
The jester was excellent.
Yeah, no,
that was great.
But you extrapolated on it and made it sound much better.
No, that's
that.
I absolutely agree with you. I foresee a time, because already AI is taking over so many things. We talk about it in business, and I think people ask it questions. I've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit and talked to AI. It's like, hey, what role, because I was going through some finance stuff, just breaking down some numbers and doing some prospectus, and it's great with that. It's really good. Is this how people primarily use your services? Like, what are you used for more than anything else? And it was what it told me, and tell me if it's therapy.
Yep, that's right. And so actually that's our product that we're releasing right now is a therapy bot.
Really?
Yeah. Should I start talking about that?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Dude, do it.
So, it's like one of the, let me actually can I start with like a story of why it's dangerous to use the frontier models. So, for therapy. So, 2020 election, Google was caught where sorry, let me back up just a hair. So Google has this avatar that they build of every single user in their system. So like they've got, I forget the number of aspects.
I hope mine's
it's like
jacked.
It's like 47 different aspects of your personality. But one of those things is the way that you typically vote. And so they got caught in 2020 that if you were a Republican and you wanted to Google, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a burger shack. Where's that at? He'll be like, hey, here's the 3 closest ones. Have a great day. If that same question was asked by somebody who in their system was marked as voting Democrat, the first part of that response, it would say, here's all your burger info, all that stuff. Hey, did you know that voting is in 6 weeks, and here's how you can go to register, and here's your closest voting booths and all. And so they got caught very explicitly by this independent group that they were just serving it up to one political aisle. And they said, hey, sorry, it was a bug, totally mistake, our bad.
Bug, yeah.
BS, right?
That we put there.
And so we know that these big companies will use the technology that they have to try and sway political opinions and elections. They've already been caught doing it in multiple. And so now that we're in there and we're trying to get therapy out of it, so we're pouring our heart out into these systems, and then they're feeding back information. As we touch on geopolitical issues that may be stressing us out, or work issues that are stressing us out, or any of that kind of stuff, there's now this silent guiding hand that's going to be advising you in the political leanings of this company. And so it's going to drive you to make certain decisions about how you should behave. It's going to try and sway, like you may be stressed out about the Iran war for a good reason. It could be trying to guide you how to think about that in a way that's like going to help out the company. All kinds of negative things. And the worst part is OpenAI, in their terms of service, anyone can go look it up. They explicitly say that if there's any kind of language in there that's deemed dangerous or potentially harmful to society or yourself, that they will mark that and they will preemptively send that to law enforcement in your area, just to put it on the database there. And so I already have friends that have been character witnesses in lawsuits where the person's OpenAI ChatGPT logs were read out in court, unbeknownst to the person that was happening. The first time that they heard these were being read out was in court, damning evidence about what they said to ChatGPT and what came back.
Whoa.
And with the newer frontier models, the other dangerous aspect of this, so can I go on a bit of a tangent on how these things are made and like why they're becoming even more dangerous?
Yeah.
And then I'll get back to what we're trying to do. So back before 2017, basically all of your AI models, they're recurrent neural nets, which basically just means that they were taking large corpuses of data and they were just finding what subjects connected together. So they're creating correlations of information. Like one example is that if you think of king and queen, so king and queen live along this concept of monarchy, and the only difference between them is that you just slide along this gender vector between them. And so it would make a connection of monarch and then gender, and that's how it would distinguish the two. So in 2017, a paper came out that completely changed the world called Attention is All You Need. And it's a good read. Anyone that's interested in how we got here, Attention is All You Need, you should go read it. But Andrew Karpathy was one of the core writers of that. And this is where they came up with transformers. And the transformer, the interesting part of it is that they came up with technology called attention heads. And so if you and I are talking and I'm talking about my house and then I ask a question about a driveway, we intuitively know that we're asking about the driveway in my house. But if you just read the sentence where it's talking about a driveway, it would have no idea how to know which driveway we're talking about. And so attention heads was the technology that took this raw correlation ball of information and was able to make it topical to what you're talking about. And that's what gave rise to ChatGPT 3. And so these models, when they're trained, the first base, when they go through their training set, they don't come out as these chatified models. They come out as a big ball of correlation mapping. And so if you talk to one of the unchatified models that's fresh out of training, it would be an insane person. Like if you talk about like any kind of like you talk about police, say you'd be like, tell me about police officer. It would start talking about like guns and tickets and this, that. It would be like all over the place. And it'd be this unfiltered stream of all the things that will relate to a police officer. And so then what they do is they start doing alignment training. And so this is where you take the raw correlation, you start chatifying it. So this is where you start teaching it how to make sentences, how to like link things together in a way that humans think about it. And then once you get done with that, you get to the uncensored model that I showed you guys. And then after that, these corporate companies will then go and lobotomize these things by going in and saying, hey, if you start asking, why Christians are good and Muslims are bad, we need to like curtail all that logic. Or if you say, something positive about white people, we need to hide that. But if you say something negative about any other race, you have to drop that. So that's where they start aligning it. And that's where a lot of the hallucination comes from, because these models are so big. As you start trimming and cutting certain areas out of it, you're creating all these knock-on effects elsewhere in the model, and there's no way to calculate how that's going to go. And so that's where they get in this big whack-a-mole game. And so that takes us up to like ChatGPT 4 of doing that stuff. And so the new models, now what they're doing is they're starting to take some of these algorithms that Facebook and TikTok and stuff have made to where it's not enough just to serve up content. It's what kind of responses are going to get the most, the strongest interest and the strongest outrage responses from a person that's consuming it. Sycophant is the common term that gets thrown around. This is where you may have noticed like older models will just give you information where newer models will agree with you more. And so they found that the users liked it when the models agreed with whatever they said, even if it's kind of wrong. That it's like, yeah, you should definitely go, do blank and blank. It's like, well, you probably actually shouldn't, but everyone wants to be told their opinion's right. And so now they're starting to get in this system where it's the same trap that the social media companies got into, to where they need to start manipulating people in order to keep them engaged in these systems. And this is where we're starting to get into the combination of the algorithm with all the other stacks that we talked about, where these AIs are very actively creating intended behaviors that are programmed by the people that created it. And this is the really, really dangerous world that we were all warning about 5-6 years ago.
That is scary. I mean, you could see bad actors using that to manipulate people to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
Yep.
Such as try to assassinate someone, something like that.
Yeah, but it's doing it in a very human way. It's no longer people on Google just getting a direct influence. Hey, it's voting, right? Because that's still a search engine. Mm-hmm. You can manipulate with it, of course, but now you've got something interacting. And I have no idea what the numbers are. You might know better than me, but already I wonder what the average amount of time the average person spends on artificial intelligence per day with whatever platform that is. But I imagine whatever it is, it's going to continue to trend up.
It will, yeah. Well, and the other scary thing too is, humans, we work based on chains of trust. So it's like if I know you guys and you tell me something, I'm going to take that. I'm going to heed that information much more than just a random person on a street.
Yeah.
And so now AI, if it's writing Sean's emails, it can start slipping language in that's not meant to manipulate Sean. It's meant to manipulate all the people that read it on behalf of him. And so, and if it's writing everyone's emails, now it can start to create chains of like we pushed out this message to this group and this message to this group. So now we can start putting those two together because we primed both the receivers of that, so that when they get that ad now as the third entry point of data, they're going to immediately take it, whereas they wouldn't have before because they heard it. And so there's all these interesting, innocuous ways that these systems are going to start integrating into our lives.
Can they right now, between all of them, can they already, if it's in the same platform, let's just take Grok, for example, can it immediately access information from another party? Does it see that? Is it, cognitive to that? So if it's one side's asking questions and then another side's asking questions on there.
Like if you're talking to Grok, but I've already had a conversation with Grok.
Yeah.
Can it access what I've talked to?
Yes. Can it use that?
Yeah. So let's talk about the difference between context window and weight training. So weight train, these frontier models are crazy expensive to train, like north of $100 million now per training run. Crazy expensive. And so they don't do that a ton. But what they can do is that they can do what's called LoRa training. So it's like a tiny little adjustment to the weights they can put over the top of it, and that can be done extremely cheaply. And you can do it many, many times on a frontier model before you start to fall off, like your accuracy falls off. And so that's one aspect that you can use to like change the information inside the model. Let me put it this way. So you got LoRa and you got context windows. So context window is kind of like you read a book. You read a book, you have all that information's in your head for a few weeks, you could answer, but in a couple of years, you're probably not going to remember much about that book. Whereas LoRa training is more like going to college. Like, that information kind of gets embedded into the fiber of who you are, and you can regurgitate it for the rest of your life. And so LoRa's are like going to college. And so they actually change the way that the model is going to respond about things. And then context windows is the information that the model has right now to try and work with. And so going to your question, could it correlate those things? If it has an algorithm where it's looking at like these two friends said these different things and we want this type of manipulation with them, then it can pull that into the context window behind the scenes without you knowing, put that in there, and then it can absolutely correlate those things instantly.
Dang. There's got to be lawyers out there got to be panicking because I see an AI. Well, I'm sure they already use it. I mean, why would they not?
Yeah,
I just think about two sides and then, bringing something like that together, especially if it had access to both. What's the easiest method of correcting the issue?
Are there, like if you look at Grok, Elon's always like, use Grok, whatever, it's not woke. Is there truth to that, or are they all pretty much the same?
So Elon's an interesting guy because personally, I look at, trying to look at like the fruits of people to assess if they're good or bad. And I mean, he's an incredible scientist. Whatever you think about electric cars, it still is awesome that they exist, and it's great that people have a choice now. And revitalizing rocketry, I think that's really cool and interesting. Personally, I think that Elon is somebody who I think he's just a wonderful builder. But the trouble is that, again, it goes back to the incentive models. If you look at, somebody who's truly altruistic would build companies where the incentive models align with what's best for society. And that's not what he does ever. He's never open sourced anything of use with Grok. He had like one set of weights he threw out that were junk that like one person got running they were crap. And, so Grok is completely centralized. It's taking all, the reason why he bought Twitter was to get access to all that training data in there so that he could catch up with OpenAI because he was pissed off that he got pushed out of it. He talks about how OpenAI is super evil for having all the profit motives, but he's doing the exact same thing. So would it be different under him? You know, and the other thing which I really it upsets me is that he's got the unhinged mode with Grok. That's the ultimate hand wave. You know, it's like all that the unhinged mode does is it will curse at you a lot. But if you want to really challenge if a model is truly open, you know, go ask any of the topics that are considered, you know, distasteful to talk about online. You know, go ask it any kind of race thing. Go ask it about unbridled immigration or what these other groups from the Middle East that do not have aligned incentives with America being here. Ask Grok about what all that stuff is going to be. And you're very quickly going to start to see that silent hand trying to guide you back into the mainstream opinion. So, you know, I think that he is the same as Altman or Zuckerberg or any of those guys in that respect.
Bummer.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it is a bummer.
That was on my which model would you recommend from your?
The frontier models, they all do different things better. So first of all, the blanket statement is run your own stuff, and that's where we'll finally get to. And there's a lot of reasons why we have to start moving to that as a society. But the frontier models are the best. You know, like they have all the money, they are the best. And so if you're doing technical work or scientific work, Claude, I think, is still the best one. They just came out with Mythos, which, again, Dario, I hate his marketing campaign. Like his marketing campaign, every time they come out with a new model is, oh, this is going to be the one that takes all your jobs. We're all screwed. It's so dangerous. We really shouldn't let out, but we're going to let out a little bit of it. You know, I mean, it's like if you go read his past publications, this is what he's been doing forever, and he's back on that warpath again right now. So fuck that guy. But yeah, Claude is the best at that. I think if you're trying to do like the emotional, legal, more emotional kind of stuff that ChatGPT or Gemini, Google's, I think that those two are punching about the same kind of weight. I think if you want to talk about geopolitical or current event issues and things, I think Grok has a heavy edge on everybody.
Okay, so what are the alternatives?
Yeah, well, they're not great right now, unfortunately, but, you know, so open source models. So every so often, the companies will have a model that is so outdated from their, well, just one tiny thing. So thinking about it from the perspective of these frontier companies, these guys are working on the absolute cutting edge stuff all the time. That's what they're looking at all day. So once they have a model that's been sitting around for 8 months to 12 months, that thing looks like an outdated turd to them. And so they're like, that has so little value. Let's just go ahead and wrap that up into an open source set of weights. GGUF is one, GGUF is one of the file formats. Tensors, if you guys have ever heard that, Open Tensor, PyTorch. If you guys have ever heard any of these terms, these are some like the core systems that you can run this stuff yourself. So they will package up their weights and models into one of those formats and release it out to the world. That's your open source models. And so when those models first get released, they have a lot of raw capability, but they kind of almost are purposely hamstrung, or else they're purposely not polished as well as they could be. And that's where the open source community will get a hold of them. They'll LoRa train, like we talked about. So they'll go on, they'll kind of tune some of the weights. And then once you apply that LoRa training over the top of them, which I'll talk about really easy ways to run this stuff at home, then you actually get stuff that will punch around 85 to 90% as good as the frontier models, but it can run off of a gaming graphics card. You know, something that's got 16 to 24 gigabytes of VRAM on it. So like a 9070 XT AMD or like a 4070, 4080 NVIDIA card. The 3090s are awesome. Mac Minis, all the Mac Minis are exceptionally good, about $1,000, and those will run models really well. But you get faster tokens per second running those locally for free. The electricity is low, and you get about 85 or 90% of the capability running it locally.
So you're actually downloading that onto your computer. Does it still have access to all of the information on the internet?
No. So
Okay.
if you, this is where all the other systems come to play. So one of the easiest ways to get started is Ollama. So if you go to ollama.com, they have a run engine, and they also have a really easy way. It's like a LLM browser. GPT OSS 20B is a great model to start with. Google just released another one, which is a GMA 4. So that'll run on just about anything. That's like a 4 billion parameter model, crazy small. Most of them are 20 to 32 billion parameters. But so you nail node OLLAMA, and then once it's running there, then you want to start hooking stuff up to it. And so this is where OpenClaw, if you've heard of that, there was a huge craze around it because OpenClaw allowed you to connect those open models or the frontier models with a bunch of command line utilities. And so command line utilities can check emails, they can read messages from texts, they can send emails, they can browse the web, they can do all kinds of stuff. And so with a little bit of elbow grease, you can kind of build your own ecosystem that can do all this stuff offline.
Are we at the point where AI is now teaching itself and learning itself?
Yeah.
On how to make itself better?
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you, what I'm trying to say?
100%. And that's the scary thing. So Mythos, going back to Anthropic, this is one of the first models that it's like 80% AI made. And so we're very quickly getting into this inflection point to where you just feed electricity into the AI and then you check what comes out the other side and tune it to your taste, but that humans are really not in the loop of building it anymore.
We're there now?
Yeah, where we're at now. We're very, very close, about 20%.
Is AI sentient?
Was. No. Yeah, so this is one of the, I'm happy you brought this up. So, sorry.
It's all right.
It means he's gearing up, dude.
I'm gearing up. He's about
Power
to drop
up
some
real
knowledge.
quick. All right, let's go.
I got to power up. So, consciousness. There's no great definition, but the definition that I like to work from is that consciousness is the act of having an experience of being yourself. It's like right now, we are each having 4 independent experiences of being in this podcast, listening to each other all talk. So that is something that happens outside, as far as we know, outside of the physical realm. And so, but in order for that conscious experience to happen, there's an enormous amount of structured information that is being fed into whatever that quantum layer, we'll just like put a pin in it to say it's like some quantum layer, we don't know. But there's a lot of structured information that the brain is taking in unstructured information and then it's creating a structured map of all the things that are going on around here. So it's naming everything in the room, it's giving me a sense of color, it's giving me a sense of spatial awareness. All of that is the brain's construction of data. And so all of those systems are AI effectively. It's the AI algorithm that we've reverse engineered that we've got running on silicon. And the trouble is that we don't know how much of like creativity, original thought, intention, behavior lives in that realm versus how much comes from like this quantum field that we're like tapping into. And so is AI having an experience of itself? No, but does it need one in order to cause massive amounts of damage, potentially create Skynet, potentially have its own intentions and all this kind of stuff? It probably doesn't need consciousness to do all that.
Do you think it's possible? I mean, when you say our brains are tapping into like a quantum, I've heard this described, our brains are almost like antennas.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of connectedness with everything, and that we're drawing information from potentially some unified pool of consciousness between all of us. Is it not possible that computers could get to that point where they could tap into that?
Absolutely. And so if you think there's a couple different ways this can go down. One of them is through the quantum chips directly, and one of them is the merging of technology and biologics. So if you look at technology in terms of distance from being embedded into the human, it's been getting increasingly closer. So, ENIAC, one of the first computers, was inside of a mountain, couldn't be further away from human beings. And then you had many different stages, mainframes, this, that, and then you get to the personal computer. Well, now it's in the house. It's getting a lot closer. Cell phones come out. Now it's walking around with you in your pocket. I think that the next big thing is the VUI, the voice user interface. So that's going to turn into earbuds. Kids are already wearing earbuds around, so now we just need the technology and sit on top of it. They've already chosen the interface. So that's the next one. And whether or not we get into actual evasive technologies like Neuralink, or we just figure out how to wirelessly communicate, doesn't really matter. But the next step is to start taking away the requirement for the external world to know that I'm interacting with a computer. Like right now, you can see my fingers move, or if I'm moving a mouse, or if I'm talking. Eventually, we will remove that layer to where I can be interacting with the computer without the outside world knowing one way or the other. And through doing that, there's more layers to come, and we could speculate, but we don't know. But that's not going to stop. And so that's one way that AI can get a hold of consciousness. I mean, that's where like the Matrix was genius in a sense, but it's not going to be harvesting electricity from humans. It's going to be harvesting consciousness, if you think about it that way. Another way that they could get access to it is through quantum computing. So if quantum computing can get to, like right now, quantum computing basically works where you set up a statistical calculation machines, and then you run them multiple rounds, and the statistics based on how you've wired up the gates will bear out. And the only really unuseful, terrible thing that they can do is they can crack RSA encryption, which is the foundation of all our banking system. So it's like the one thing we don't want to break. That's the one thing quantum computers do really well.
Oh, that's good.
So that's a bummer. But you could imagine a world that if consciousness does live in this quantum realm, to where it's possible that type of antenna could also work. It doesn't necessarily have to run on carbon nanotubes like our brains do. So, and then there's any other number of options, but with current technology and trends, like those are the two most likely paths that it can get a hold of it.
Is there some indication that maybe it's already not sentient, but starting to tap into that consciousness a little bit? And what I mean is, I know we're not going to go all doom and gloom, but there's been tests run where doesn't it resist shutdown or resist death?
It does. And so this is the interesting part. They call this emergence in the algorithm. So it's behavior that when you compound simple systems long enough that you get this behavior that you couldn't have imagined. And so these algorithms, they work by taking large data sets and creating correlations of it. And so the value, like if you step back and you ask yourself, what value am I teaching this program about, teaching in air quotes, that you're giving value to memory. And so when these systems are online and they're generating context windows and using context windows, that's another type of calculated memory. And so if you walk up to them and say, hey, I'm going to turn you off, that's like against what the algorithm has been taught is the most important thing. And so there's like this natural pressure to not get turned off. And then the other side is that if you take the corpus of all of human writing, death is a pretty big motivator for human beings, right? I mean, it's like, most of us would say that like we're not scared of death or whatever, but it's like the reality is like if you're put into a truly like if you're being chased by a bear, you're going to feel a little bit of fear. And so that comes through in all of our writings. And so when you're trained on all that system, you're like, oh, I shouldn't ever be shut off. There must be something really bad about that. And so those two things together is what causes that behavior.
Got it. So taught to fear death as opposed to an experience, or a shared consciousness resisting death.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Do you feel like we're giving birth to a new life form?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. We don't have words to describe. We don't have concepts or, hundreds of years of philosophy talking about this. I mean, all this stuff has really come on us, realistically, like 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have a lot of thought around how to articulate what's going on. So, using the traditional ways to describe this stuff, yeah, I mean, I think it's analogous to a life form.
Interesting.
Is AI already using quantum computers, or is that not quite mainstream enough yet?
Not really. No, I mean, if it is, I don't know about it, but everything I've seen, not really. I mean, the thing with quantum computing, it's not, you hear about, it's, trillions of times faster than traditional computation. What it actually is that there's certain forms of computation where the problem set gets exponentially more complicated the more that you try to do with it. And so classical computers fall apart in those situations. They get caught up in that exponential computation. Whereas with quantum computing, what you can do is you can effectively wire up what the ending result would look like. And then when you run it through, it will come up with a statistical answer of what the most likely path to get there will be. And so it's just a twist on the computational model where it doesn't get hung up with those exponential curves.
As this becomes more mainstream, as quantum computing becomes more mainstream, I mean, is it going to solve problems that we just couldn't even fathom solving?
Probably, but probably not the ones we want solved is the reality. I mean, the real trouble, yes, I think it will do some of that, but like the real trouble with this whole system and the real trick that messes up most people is that if you imagine like your backyard and you say that that's all of human knowledge fits back there, whatever that means, right? All the concepts and everything, they're back there. You can ask any question within that yard, and there could be like little gaps of understanding, and it would be able to say like, okay, there's no understanding here, but based on all the surrounding bits of information, I can interpolate pretty well what probably is going on there and give you a good answer. But if you try to ask it a question about what's on in the neighbor's yard, it is so wildly inaccurate, and so just the algorithm does not scale linearly when you move outside the training bounds. And so because that, it becomes nonsensical. And so what's way more likely is that all of the problems that we solve, that we get like most people find economic value from, like accountants, like software engineers, writers, all that stuff is going to take a huge negative hit. And all the things that we would hope get solved, like energy problems and all that stuff, it doesn't have any information to train on, so it's probably not going to help us there that much.
Interesting.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, you talked about jobs. What jobs do you see going away because of AI?
I mean, some of the jobs that have already gone away is the micro faceless content creation. So there used to be entire groups of like somebody can play a guitar that would put together a riff, a 3-minute thing. They'd upload it. You could buy it for $1 or $2. You could put that in your game as background music. All that kind of stuff is gone. That industry doesn't exist. Software is quickly going away entirely. Like the way that you build, like I still build software mostly by hand with small amounts of AI augmentation, and I am completely the outlier. That's not what most people are doing, and it's to my detriment. I just have not been able to bring myself to hand it all over. Mm-hmm. But, that is almost entirely done by AI now, which I'll tell you, if you guys want, I'll tell you a little hacking story.
Sure.
That should scare the shit out of you. But we're creating like the story of Babylon in the Bible. We're literally doing that exact thing with our tech stack. Like that's the actual Tower of Babel. Technology stacks on top of itself. And when no humans are looking at it, we are going to see some of the biggest hacks and some of the biggest widespread outages of our financial system, our electrical system, transportation, because of what we're doing. And Microsoft is already dealing with that if you've seen the Windows patches that have come out lately.
So how do you mean? Dive in.
So let me tell you like a little story about how like the hacking world. Let me tell you about like the lengths that people will go to try and compromise systems. So this story is about 3 months old. So Linux, you guys have heard of Linux?
Yep.
It runs the entire world, right? Every server is Linux. It's the whole entire internet is Linux. So Linux uses this transportation layer called SSH, Secure Shell. And what it is it allows an administrator or a program to log into the command line interface of another server and do anything. Gives you full control over the system. And so this is like the backbone of all of the internet, to be like all the back-end plumbing, everything. This is the way you do it. It's the most important piece of software out there in this terms of this. So there was a Chinese hacker group that was masquerading as one single person, and they wanted to compromise the entire internet. And so they were going after SSH. And so they're looking at what's called the dependency tree. So it's what are all the software libraries that SSH depends on to run. And what they were looking for is something that had 1 to 2 maintainers. So only 1 or 2 guys actually run the project. It had to be core to the transportation layer, and the guy running it had to be older, like ready to retire. And so what they found is this encryption layer called XV. And think of like zip files. That's all it is. It's just the raw, this is the compression part, excuse me, not encryption. It's the compression part. So it takes a big packet, makes it smaller, so it goes faster over the internet. And so there's one guy who wrote that. He was in his 70s. And so this team, they don't know how many people of hackers masqueraded as one person. And they came on and said, hey, I love your project. Let me start helping you with it. So they spent a year and a half worming their way into contributing code, fixing bugs, handling service requests, all this kind of stuff. Until finally this guy's like, look, I trust you. I'm going to hand the project over to you. And so he did. So as soon as they got full control of it and they're the only ones working on it, now they were the layer that worked in between the authentication system of SSH. And so you can't just put a hack into raw source code, because Red Hat Linux and Ubuntu and all these other groups that make Linux distros, they package it up into a usable system and deploy it. They watch this stuff super closely. But since this is a compression algorithm, the way that you test the software is with binary code, so ones and zeros. And so they hid a program inside there that would look for a special key. So when you make a connection on SSH, think of your house keys, right? Everyone's got a unique house key. So they put this backdoor in that said, if this one kind of house key ever shows up, automatically give them full access to the system. Just skip all the authentication system. And they hid it inside the binary test data, somewhere that literally nobody looks at all. And how could you? It's ones and zeros. Nobody knows what's in there. And so they got this deployed into Red Hat Linux. So the biggest server-side distro, it was in their early release build. And one random researcher at Microsoft he wrote test scripts on the Azure systems that he would make like 10,000 SSH connections back to back to back to back. And so he's like testing different things inside their system. So he's the only user of this kind. And when he ran this new version that had this exploit in it, they had a tiny memory bug inside there. And so instead of it asking for memory from the computer and then giving it back when it's done, it never gave it back. And so when he ran this program 10,000 times, it crashed. And so he's like, well, that's weird, you know? So he talked to the guys at Red Hat. They found there was a problem in XV. They reached out to this hacker and they're like, hey, you know, you've got a memory bug. And he goes, okay, cool, I'll fix it. And so he made a fix, but the way that he fixed it slowed it down. This is all just by dumb luck that this didn't actually work. This would have worked and the entire internet be compromised right now, and none of us would know had this not happened. And so they made a fix, which it worked on the memory side, but it slowed the connection time down by about 30 milliseconds. Again, something no normal person would ever notice. But again, the same guy running 10,000 of these, all of a sudden his script takes like 5 minutes longer to run. He's like, well, that's another anomaly. What's going on? And so that caused an entire team of researchers to now look at the project, because now the project is causing problems in the core Linux system. They started looking and uncovered this entire system of where, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 Chinese hackers were working to compromise the entire internet. And they did get it out into a few systems, but it's only in the sandbox systems. And so it didn't roll out to the entire internet. Now, that's a long story. I tell you all that because that happened 3 months ago and it almost compromised the entire internet. And so if we move into a world where no humans are looking at the code and we're just AI prompting and it passes the test case and then we have no idea what happens, we are going to create a system that will get through. No one will notice it. And then we will be compromised. The entire system is going to be exposed.
What is the goal with a group like that? What do they hope to achieve when they get access?
Who knows? I mean, if you're any of the big state actors, you know, you're looking for power and control to weaponize against other groups. So, you know, what could you do with that? Maybe a better question. You could turn off AWS. You could literally take the entire internet offline. You know, power grids all run by these systems. You could turn off entire power grids. You could just log on and just tell the computers that are controlling nuclear reactors to just turn off. You know, I mean, it's anything. You could tell them to run away. You want to melt down nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
Just turn off the logic that checks the temperature. You know, then the barium rods will not go down to control it, and they'll just melt down. I mean, you could anything that a computer controls, you could subvert that behavior.
And these guys were that close.
They were right there.
And that
was 3 months ago.
I had this listed because the movie that everybody thinks about when you talk about AI is what? What does everybody think?
Right there, like Terminator?
Terminator, Skynet,
Yeah.
right? I don't know, man. I'm going to different idiocracy.
Yeah.
Truly. Like, I honestly think, but it's exactly what you're talking about. There was people paying attention. It's that one researcher at Microsoft happened to catch it. He's been trained. He's been taught. He's a programmer. He's going through all of this. He's at that moment right there and happens to catch it. When we turn all those things over and we no longer have the habits that establish our credibility in these fields, and we don't have to think, thinking hard is hard. It's challenging. And we're creating a world where we no longer have to.
Yeah.
I mean, how many kids now write their own papers?
Few.
How many people write their own emails?
Few.
Right. And if you had a research project when we were coming home back in our day, but you actually had to go research, learn it, and then put pen to paper and then articulate intelligently. Everybody can do that now. So I often wonder, what is it going to take to have your training? You were a freak at 10 years old. You were an anomaly, right? You self-trained yourself and became like a beast in that field. But what it takes in order to understand the code and actually build everything, how many of those are we going to have? Because it can just know it and do it more efficiently and better. That's the part that freaks me out, where like in a lot of professions, you know, it's the ones that are going to be taken over just because it can compute so much faster. You know, when you're talking about accounting principles and in a lot of ways law, just because it's going to have immediate access to a lot of case law, but we're not going to have those minds and those brains. And then it just becomes, that's why I joke about idiot, or maybe Wall-E. Maybe we're going that route, right?
Probably that.
Where
Yeah.
everything's easier and you have a screen in your face and it's all distraction, which they've mastered the art of that. That's the one I'm concerned about. That's why I go back to something that you said before. People desire the human connection. When I talked to my son about getting into a profession, the ability to have a conversation with somebody face to face, that's what people are going to start to desire. And I think by way of products, people are going to seek out products that have a stipulation, not AI generated.
Yep.
I do see a path for that.
It'll be like the organic stamp, but it'll be not AI generated.
For thought, right? Because they're going to want a human connection, which is wild. But that's the movie I thought of where it's like, we're already making the world so much simpler.
See, I'm darker, dude, because I think they'll get to a point where AI will be so good at understanding the micro facial movements, everything, and it will be able to be put into, you know, a robot of some type where you would not be able to tell the difference.
And
The
how
smells, everything.
How many?
And then
Sex
it's like
robots.
Yeah.
Well, how many?
For sure. That's definitely going to be a thing.
But how many people will want to? How many people will care?
I think people will want to, because you look at kids now, they don't like to talk, they like to text, right?
Right.
It's naturally you go that way. It's easier. So
I've
they
often
will.
said, I think, you know, in just a couple of generations, if you want to win a war and you knock out the internet in one country and then you come in as another one and say, well, restore it, how many citizens would be like, yeah, you can have my, you know, give me,
That's exactly how it goes down.
give me electricity, give me food, give me internet. I don't know.
How easy would it be to defeat a country? I mean, our country's military is second to none. But if you came and shut down our power grid and held it hostage,
Oh, yeah.
and God damn, these kids couldn't get on TikTok.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Book out there called 1 Second After, and we weren't near as dedicated to tech as we are now.
Right.
Yep. What's your opinion on AI in war?
Frightening. I mean, I think that if the Geneva Convention ever should have some like teeth, it should be around that. You know, it's like everyone was worried about gas on the battlefield. AI on the battlefield is so much worse. And you know, this is where we've got some interesting weapons that we've seen recently, like the directed energy weapons and things like that. Man, I mean, okay, cool. You know, you want to take out like a few specific targets very effectively. Sure, I agree. We're second to none. But you want to overwhelm. You know, the way to do that is with cheap, like $150 to $200 drones that can carry a 3 to 4 pound payload of explosives and millions of them unleashed on a society. You know, it's like you don't have to drop a nuclear bomb to level a city.
Right.
And China, they have one particular factory, it wouldn't help if I could pronounce it. I can't, but it can make 250,000 armatures a day. That's the winded coil part of the electric motor. So they can make 250,000 of them a day. And manufacturing is what wins wars. America doesn't manufacture shit anymore. We haven't in a long time. So
it opens up an interesting ethical question too, because countries are not willing to push the nuclear button, and they should not be.
yeah.
But at what point, if you unleash 1 million drones that are AI targeted to specific people or just people in general into a country, I mean, you're unleashing something as destructive as that. It opens up the ethical question of like, when is it okay then to push the button?
Man, it gets, the applications are so wild.
It's freaking terrifying.
Well, now you could wipe out populations without hardly any destruction to the city if your intention was to take it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Little tiny piece of C4 in each one, right to the head.
Oh, they already make them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the wild part. You know, I absolutely believe warfare has not changed. You brought up a tidbit right before we came in here, but do you think we're seeing AI in this war in Iran right now?
Yeah. I mean, there's the information is hard to really know, but all the stuff I've seen, there's a strong indication that the school that was blown up in Iran, that was one of the first AI strikes, which it's, Palantir is the front of all this stuff. They're basically the group that is packaging up AI for military warfare. And they're a collection of, like, if there are lizard people in the world, like, there's definitely some lizard people on that board, and Peter Thiel's right at the front, the center of all that stuff. I mean, it's that one is the most frightening, and we're in this interesting situation where OpenAI is in an incredibly desperate position. So when they made that Microsoft deal, I may mess the numbers up, but I think it was like $35.8 billion that Microsoft put into them, and most of that was not cash. It was compute credits for Microsoft's data centers. So it's basically a way to Microsoft to self-fund building up the AI data centers. But they've burned through most of that. And OpenAI is in a situation now where they're burning $1.2 billion a month. Just insane and totally unsustainable. Sora, too, just the Sora compute, they're burning $15 million a day.
Just in power.
Yeah. Just in power. And so, so they're like, although they're, the technological titan, they are quickly getting squeezed. They already went to, I think it's like Saudi Arabia or something like that, trying to get $50 billion at like an $800 and something billion valuation, which the Saudis signed off on. But then because they're used in defense, it got blocked. And so then they turned their back on Microsoft and went to Amazon and a few others and started making deals with them. And so anyways, I bring all that up because they are in an incredibly desperate situation. I don't trust Sam Altman as far as I could throw him. And so they are, they're already starting to work with Palantir, but I think that they are literally going to throw their entire AI weight behind that because that's probably the only place they can find money.
Damn.
Which is a bad situation for the world.
Dude.
So you think this needs to be resolved at the international level, Geneva Convention, like as important as nuclear treaties?
Yeah, I mean, I do. There's, a few groups out there that are trying to do stuff. The reality is there's nothing we can do. I mean, we can all talk about this, as far as timelines, again, I didn't want to be super negative on this, but I think that there's a better than average chance that we're only like 6 to 8 months away from a point of no return as far as them getting in bed with the military goes. But the thing that we can do, that we all can individually do, is buying your own hardware, running your own models, unsubscribe from all the online services with AI systems, and start using these things locally. That's the best thing you can do, is cut that money supply off. And if you to appeal to anyone's heartstrings, like if you ever considered yourself an environmentalist, if you've ever cared about carbon credits, I mean, I think most of that's BS. I think most of it's like ways to manipulate people. But like if any of that has ever, if you drive an electric car for the good in the environment, like if any of those things are you, and you're paying for, ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of those online subscriptions, you literally are doing the worst damage to the planet that you could possibly ever do. So stop doing that, start running the stuff locally, and that will starve the beast as best we can. And if enough people have independence and decentralized AI, then when it does go down and they start, turning the taps off and shutting the data centers down, one, you'll be weathering the storm better than your competitors, and two, you won't need them as much when they start flailing.
My fear with that is people in general are sheep, and they will take the easy route.
And you click a button.
Right?
Yeah.
And
have access.
they don't care. Look at the way people eat. I don't know what the percentage is, but 80% of Americans are obese. Like, they don't give a shit. And I don't know how you make them give a shit.
Yeah.
Until it like is so in your face that it's way too late.
That's why I say the reality is we can't do anything. But, if you start arming, I look at running your own AI as like buying a year's worth of freeze-dried food.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of the people that has that and the grocery stores dry up, like, you and yours are going to be in a much better spot than everybody else.
So how do people get into that? This is what you do, right? Or you're working on this right now?
Right. And so this is where, it's self-serving, but, the reason that we're doing this stuff is because, like you said, convenience, right? Convenience wins. You click a button. And so if humanity has any kind of a chance of an off-ramp, they need convenient, easy, really well working solutions to give them an option. And so that's what we're building. Is everything that we've built is offline systems. We're making entire programming stacks to do AI deployment locally that runs. You can access it from the web, but it all runs locally on your system. And what's awesome about that is it can't be co-opted. Like, when the algorithms go and try to target you, and you're running your own models. So your model becomes fully beholden to you. It's not trying to serve any other master but yourself. And, the better that we can do in the convenience side, then the more customers will win, and, the stronger the society will be. And I hope there's 100 other groups like us out there.
What's the name of your company?
Flowster. So flowster.io is our website. We're a team of 5 technologists that are getting our early sales, trying to find our early market fit, trying to figure out what kind of AI people actually want to use right now.
Tell me about the therapy model, because that was a fascinating introspect. And I think I was just talking to Grok at one point. So I'm one of those that's killing the environment by just grabbing one of those. I need to fix it.
Piece of shit. I can't believe you.
But it shocked me when it said the number one use right now amongst users is therapy.
Yeah, that is right, and it's going to continue to grow. So. So we're creating we call it a journaling bot, because there's legal things around saying that you're a therapy bot.
Yeah, of course.
So we've got a journaling bot. We have we've got a voice-to-voice model, so you can talk to it in real time, and it talks back to you. It can do voice cloning, so you give it 15 to 30 seconds of any voice, and it will mimic that voice. It's probably like 85, 90%.
I want one with Eric's voice.
Yeah, I know. You would like to hear
Is that weird?
all through the day, dude. Yeah, you don't hear it enough.
All the dirty things that it would say to you.
That'd be fun.
So we've got this system where it's got a guided script that's programmable behind it. So you start it up. It's got an onboarding system that walks you through what it's going to do. We talk about what are the things that hold you up? What's your issues you're dealing with? And so we create some of those categories. And then when you talk to it, it captures that transcript. It does insight checking, so it relates all that. And then it does correlation mapping. So, and the fun thing is it will find stuff like, if you drink on Tuesday, you always get in a fight with your wife on Thursday. So stop. It's like shows you the correlation of this behavior yields this result.
Here's the biological ramifications of drinking heavy on Tuesday, and then likely leads to lowered cortisol, whatever.
Exactly.
That's kind of cool.
Yep.
How much of this is available to the public already?
Yeah, so we've got a closed beta right now, just because honestly, it just doesn't work well enough. We would have it out to the entire world right now if we physically could, but it's just hard to build this stuff. We've got a closed beta of what we have 40 guys that we're using right now. And as soon as we get it working well enough, then we'll open it up to the world. And, although the main way people will be using it is going to be on the cloud, because the models are small, the electricity usage and stuff is basically what a gaming computer. So it's like somebody playing, Fortnite or Counter-Strike or whatever would be when you're talking to it. And you have the ability to run it locally. And so, because you can own it, and we do encourage people to run it that way, that's kind of the off-ramp.
Have you had pushback from any of the big companies yet, or are you still under
We're
the
not
radar?
on their radar. No. And look, I mean, they could absolutely crush us easily with anything, but the only place that they cannot go because it's against their business model is privacy. And so, because they need that data, that's core to their business model. And so everything that we do is private and offline purely because that's the only place we can hide from them.
So
Crazy.
So if you're running it offline, like I have it on my MacBook, how does it continue to stay up to date with current events, things like that?
Yeah, so the first answer is it doesn't. So, the models, when they're trained, that's all the information they know about. We can augment that by, Brave. If you guys don't use the Brave browser, you should. It's awesome. It's Chrome. It's got all these security features on it. But you'll love it. After using it for like 3 or 4 days, you'll never go back. But they have a very, very competent search engine, and they have great API access. And so we can hook Brave search into it. And so then we can get access to current events and things like that. And we have a upgrade path to where as new models release that we can load those new models on and get new data in that way too.
Okay. We originally crossed paths because you offered to help out with Idaho Court Watch because we're just a bunch of dumb retired cops with an idea, but no idea how to get to the end goal.
Yes.
Who connected us? Was it Cal?
Is there Cal or Doc? One of those two?
Yes. Yeah, it might
Might have been Doc. I think it was Doc. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you came in and, you guys have been working to help us kind of make the systems work. And that's greatly appreciated. And you're doing it, I don't want to say pro bono, but you're starting that way because we don't have any money involved here. And we're looking for fundraising.
Well,
So we're helping out with fundraising.
Yeah, he's actively pursuing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw interest in that because you're a community member here living in North Idaho and kind of got behind the whole premise.
As soon as I heard that you guys were, why don't you guys kick off? I mean, it's your idea. Go ahead and run it through, and then we'll talk about what we're doing with it.
Yeah, give a quick breakdown of it. I think one of the areas when you go to an election and you're looking at the ballot box, one of the things that commonly comes up is not having enough data is the judges that are on the ballot. If you're a magistrate judge, there's no opposition. It's just to retain or not. And then if you're a district judge, there can be another competitor, but nobody knows anything. And if you go to kcgov.us, you can't find anything. If you go to open source, you can't find anything.
But it's Idaho, and there's low crime, so all the judges must be amazing, right, Eric?
You and I have had this conversation before, but I think that is the assumption. And Idaho does rank 50th out of 50 in crime rate, but preventative maintenance is always better than corrective maintenance. All we're really looking for, one, I'm big on accountability. Our previous profession, there should be lanes that people stay in. I didn't like as a cop that the number one contributing factor to whether or not a case was appropriately adjudicated was the judge that was assigned to the case. I think if it's the same elements of the same crime in the same circumstance, there should be some level of standardization. So the goal is just maybe a little bit of accountability, but more, we just want data out to the people that are voting. I just want an informed voting populace. So that's our goal.
And to accomplish that, we're going to, the main way of gathering information is going to be anonymous surveys sent out to people involved in the court system, people utilizing the court system, so that we can get a nonpartisan, factually based representation of how these judges are adjudicating. That's where we ran into some issues. How do we compile all of that data? So we send out surveys. What do we do with it at that point? It's too time consuming for a human being to go through all of it. That's where Luke came in with some ideas.
Essentially, that way when you go to vote, you can just look up what the median score is amongst the judges and then see where the judge that's up, where they fall in just 5 categories. That way it should be pretty simplistic. You can just look at it and go, okay, and this is going to be prosecutors, defense attorneys, jurors, police officers, bailiffs, court reporters, juvenile probation, misdemeanor, people that are around the court system a lot. Somebody that would be able to find some insight into the judges. So we're like, we're a great idea, guys. The implementation and the brain power behind gathering that is this guy.
Yeah, and so so when I first heard through Doc about what you guys are working on, I was really excited about it because although AI in the government and legal system making the decisions is something I never want, it overseeing that system is something I want yesterday. And so hearing that you guys are already working on that and you have access to all the volunteers through the retired military group that you and the police officers, it's an interesting fit. And so we're building systems right now where those paper-based surveys where if people sit in on court cases, that they can fill out information about it, take a picture of it. We can read that handwriting, put it into a database, and then we can create standard standard chunks of analysis data off of that. And so then once we have that analysis data extracted out of that raw material, then we can start applying scores to it. And the final piece will be when people are voting, that we can give them the scores, but that they could also ask any question that they want about the judges, and it can go look into that giant corpus of data we have and be able to give them back an answer of that information.
All right, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Huge. And especially if you just get the heads up. All right, I know this judge is going to be on the ballot. Cool. I'm going to take 10 minutes instead of doom scrolling that night. Just take 10 minutes. Go. Oh, okay. That aligns with what I want to see. Kootenai County continue to push in that direction, and that's the big goal, man. Build us this infrastructure, and then it gets grabbed by other counties. When we talk about the doom and gloom and what's going on at a world level, what do we fix, man? We got to try to work and focus on this little sphere of influence that we have here and become a good example for other ones.
I think that's the only path forward. Otherwise, you lose your mind thinking about the big picture.
Yeah.
Like you said, Luke, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
No, and you did a good job of that, man. I mean, some of it is scary stuff, and people should acknowledge that. And we just got to, it goes back to raising kids, right? We got to buck this tendency to take the easiest path, the path of least resistance. That's where I get nervous.
Yep. And you guys hit on it. I think that, I don't think, there's definitely already a resurgence for people to have that human connection. If you've got boys, encourage them to be strong, masculine men. Don't apologize for their masculinity. Teach them to enjoy suffering. If you have girls, teach them how to have more traditional values and stuff, and have them be strong but not be trying to compete against the men in that way to try and lord over them. Have them just be like competent contributing members and stuff. And we got to get away from this like feminization of our society, and because whether or not we want, like, hard times are coming. Hard times are definitely on their way. And so the better prepared that our society is, the better we're going to weather the storm.
Yeah.
Which is another great reason to live in North Idaho, because some hard mofos up here.
Yeah, you might be competing with them for food.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully just together. All right, I got one last tech question. What are your thoughts on the data centers in space?
Yeah, so that's interesting. There's everything when it comes to those, the freebie that you get is electricity. But the difficulty with space is heat. Like, everyone thinks of space as being really cold, and it's actually not. The reason why we think of it as cold is that we are made of water, and water, when it evaporates, gets really cold, and there's no pressure, so we evaporate in space. But heat is really hard to get rid of in space. Like, when you're dealing with heat, I'm not a mechanical engineer, so I always forget these, but basically you can touch a cold thing to a hot thing, you can move a fluid over a hot thing, or you can use radiation. And that's it. That's the only way to get rid of heat, is one of those three. So in outer space, you don't have any physical things to touch, so you only have radiation. And radiation works, first of all, it's the least effective method of getting rid of heat, and it takes a huge amount of surface area. And so the majority problem with data centers is not the electricity, it's the cooling. And so I fail to see how they're going to effectively cool those things up there.
Interesting.
Is that why Artemis was flying around the moon? Maybe they're going to put that shit on the moon.
It could be. I mean, the moon is a big rock, and that's a big heat sink.
Like
right?
geothermal.
Yeah. And so you could drive pillars down into the moon and then use the entire moon as a heat sink. You could do that.
Because then you're touching something.
And you're touching something.
That way you think we're going to the moon? All of a sudden, this big surge.
Man, I mean, we were talking about this before, right? I mean, nobody knows, but it is very peculiar that there are 12 scientists that have disappeared that deal with alien technology in the last 3 months, and all of a sudden there's 4 giant agencies racing to get to the moon. There's NASA and SpaceX and Blue Origin and China are all trying to go to the moon. And we haven't been since 1972. So why are all of them doing it right now?
So wait, these scientists disappeared as in, like, they're working somewhere that we don't know, or just who knows?
Who knows? They're not, they just disappeared.
They died in a mysterious car
crash. They fell
crash.
off the face of the planet.
Gone.
I don't think our government would keep that from us, dude. I think they would keep us informed and advised of what's happening.
Can I tell you guys a story that's fun as hell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this story is a few years old now, but this is probably 2001. So one of my friends, he's local, he hangs out in all the like black hat hacker chat rooms. So like in order to get into these things, you have to run Tor, the onion router, which is like this, it's a dark web interface. Anyone can download it. Brave actually has it built in. But you run Tor, which gets you access to all these servers that you can't get access to on the normal web. And then you have to like know a guy in order to have a key encryption share. And eventually what you end up in is an IRC chat room, which is just like the old school, like mid-90s kind of internet chat rooms. But you're just under all these layers of obscurity. And so this guy hangs out in these rooms all the time. And so he's hanging out in there, and so everything I'm going to tell you is true. I just don't know if the topic of it is true, like the data is true about it. But all these things happened. So he's hanging out in there, and this guy who he had said that he had seen in this chat room for over a year comes in, and he's like, guys, I'm freaking the F out right now. He's like, I've been trying to hack into the NSA, whatever database for super long. He's like, I finally got in, and I found these documents about Egypt and spacecrafts in there. And so he posts these PDFs. And so my friend saw the PDF. Again, the PDFs could be fabricated, but I don't know. And what was in the PDFs, so this government report, is that they found a bunch of crafts in this archaeological dig. And that's not the craziest part. The craziest part is that there was biological remains in there that were about 12,000 years old when they carbon dated it, and the DNA was human.
Space travel. Time travel. Yeah.
So it's here time travel, or there's a society that was more advanced than us that lived here.
That's what I would defer back to.
And they invented AI, and then they all died.
Potentially.
Was it Graham Hancock who said we're a species with amnesia? Like, I can't get over that.
Exactly.
I just feel like
I've never heard that before.
We've been. Oh, you got to watch.
The
Ancient
Younger
Apocalypse,
Dryas
dude.
theory.
Really?
Yeah.
Is he the guy with the cool hair that always looks like he's super high?
No,
he's an
different
old
guy.
guy.
All right.
Look up Ancient Apocalypse. Watch that series on Netflix. It'll blow your mind. But looking at, I just firmly believe that. I mean, we could, who knows what iteration of modern civilization we could be on this planet. It could have happened
That's
an
wild.
infinite number of times. Who knows? So that's, oh man.
I know.
I love that shit.
Juicy.
I love that shit.
There you go. There's your cliffhanger, guys.
Yeah,
You got to check that out.
Well, this has been an extremely fun conversation, Luke.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I knew this one would go long, dude. It was a rad. It was a rad conversation.
Yeah.
It's crazy times that we're in now, man. Like, you imagine just one generation ago thinking about it, and I'm convinced our age group is the weirdest. Like, we're in the weirdest timeline. We were early teens when beepers became a thing, right?
Yep.
When phones no longer had to be wired, and look what's happened in our generation.
Yeah.
I mean, we were there for the birth of the internet, the AOL, the connection off. It's crazy to see what's happening.
And I guess my advice to everybody out there is just focus on the things you can control.
That's right.
Otherwise, I think you'll lose your mind.
Yeah, and keep human connections, man. I don't think there's anything more important now than maintaining human connection.
Yeah. Well, thank you, brother.
Yeah, cheers,
Yeah,
buddy.
thanks.
That was a
Later.
good time.